Okay.
Hello and welcome to Online Learning in a Hurry, guest episode 2. Today we have Skallerup Bessette on. I'm very excited. We've got a super interesting conversation for you today, guys. We are going to be talking about the effective emotional labor, which is one of those things that when you don't see that person who's in front of you and you can't actually tell that they're struggling, you got to keep in mind all the time. So Lee, thanks so much for coming. Can you give us a
No
super
problem.
brief introduction about what you do and then fire away?
Sure. So I am a learning design specialist at the Center for New Designs for Learning and Scholarship, also known as CANDLES. Yeah, I've said it so many times now, and you saw me, I'm like, okay, what does it stand for? Because internally it's just CANDLES, right? I work at CANDLES at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. I'm not currently in Washington, D.C. in my office. I'm in my lovely bedroom/office in Northern Virginia. Former, or still current, I guess, Canadian, born and raised in Montreal. My usual job when it's not a pandemic is I help faculty incorporate technology in pedagogically responsible and productive ways into their teaching, both in face-to-face traditional courses and also online and hybrid courses. I also help with online and hybrid course design, and general support for academic technology. So I kind of do a lot of faculty development, online learning, instructional design, a lot of that kind of stuff. But so a couple of years ago when I transitioned, I have a PhD in comparative literature, so was very traditional on the academic track and all of that, and stuck in contingent faculty positions. And about 5 years ago, I transitioned into faculty development, which is traditional, a little bit more traditional teaching and learning, helping faculty be better teachers. And I was really struck when I started that role, how hard it was. And I couldn't quite understand why it was so hard for me, because I had all the skills, right? I had like the skills that they describe in the job description. It's like, I know the technology, I know pedagogy, but what I was struggling with was what I later learned was affective or emotional labor, which was in these consultations, in these interactions with faculty. A lot of what I had to do was manage my own emotions. And this is the textbook definition, and it comes from sociologist Arlie Hochschild's book, The Managed Heart. And she studied flight attendants. And basically what they had to do is they had to manage their emotions in order to evoke the proper emotions in the people they were dealing with, namely passengers, right? How do you maintain that sense of calm? How do you maintain that sense in this, flying death tube? It's a very, it's a go read the book. It's not how she describes it, but for the 5-minute summary here. And I began to read about this idea of emotional or affective labor, and how I did have to manage my own emotions, manage my own reactions, manage my own feelings, in order to be able to effectively work with faculty who, in these interactions where you're dealing with fear, you're dealing with vulnerability, you're dealing with uncertainty, you're dealing with change. And so our very good colleagues at in libraries, our librarians, were doing a lot of work and thinking about this sort of thing. So I went to the literature around libraries, talking about these, and started thinking about it in terms of the work we do as faculty developers, as academic technologists. And so, as you can imagine, at a time when we are rapidly trying to move courses unexpectedly into distance delivery formats in a hurry, right?
Yeah, right.
You can imagine that, faculty emotions are running high and student emotions are running high. Yeah. And so all of these interactions that we have between those who are trying to support faculty and moving their courses online, with faculty trying to support students who are dealing with all of this uncertainty, all of a sudden we're doing a lot more affective and emotional labor, right? And so it's been turned up to 11,000 to a certain extent. And so, and a lot of people, I wrote a piece for EDUCAUSE about this, naming it, because I think that there's something really powerful in even just acknowledging that this is work and that what you're doing is work.
Yeah.
And this is why you're so exhausted and this is why you're so burnt out. Yes, it's the long hours. Yes, it is a high pressure situation, but there is also this added layer of affective labor that you are doing, right, in order to try and make this transition go as well as possible, right?
And so it puts you in that position where you're constantly going to have to check yourself. So if you have an emotional response, you got to have that little voice in the back of your head that says, just remember that email you're about to respond to right now. Had you gotten that email 4 weeks ago, you'd probably be okay with it. But your emotional response to that, or that you should maybe take an extra couple of minutes with somebody else who's doing the same thing for you. You receive a nasty email and you're like, yeah, that's probably that person who's overloaded, probably not about me. And give everybody just a little bit more space, give yourself some more space.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do 2 or 3 things, what should people be doing to sort of?
Well, I think that the one of the most important things is remember that, like you kind of said, everybody's human right now. Everybody's dealing with this at up to 11, and we just have to remember the other person's humanity on the other side of the screen, on the other side of the email, on the other side of the LMS. It's we've all gotten a little more intimate in terms of we've all gone in each other's workrooms and bedrooms and everywhere else that's maybe uncomfortable. But again, it is easy to forget that we're all dealing with an unexpected situation, both in terms of the education, but also what's going on around us in life. So keeping that at the forefront, having a support group, right? Like you got to have the group on the DMs or on the chats or the or your text messages where there has to be a kind of quote unquote safe space where you can go and find support and cry and rage and all of those things that you're holding back and managing because it's particularly from my job, like interactions with faculty sometimes, right? Like they're great. But then we're all in such a stressful situation. And why doesn't the technology just do what I want it to do?
It won't.
It won't, right?
It's not going to.
No, but like it's like, but this is supposed to solve the problem, right? And you're like, but how do we get ourselves into a position where, we have these,
pressure release valves.
Pressure release valves, and because you have to be able to maintain it to have a productive conversation and consultation, but then you've got to have somewhere to put this thing that you're just like, that's just throbbing, right? Like you're just like, so I write, I journal. That's sort of my way that I've been handling this. I also have a good group of people to support me on Twitter and elsewhere that we've sort of rallied around each other. And then, so that's 2. And I would think like one of my hopes is that after all this is sort of settled, is that we do begin to have more meaningful and productive conversations around affective and emotional labor being real work. And work that should be recognized, work that should be compensated, work that sometimes is made more difficult because there's an assumption of quote unquote professionalism, right? I've got some pushback saying I've gotten pushback saying like, oh, well, isn't that just professionalism? And it's like, well, there's,
you can call professionalism that if you want,
right?
You can call that professionalism as you want, but it doesn't change the fact that you got to deal with it, make allowances for it, understand it.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Lee. I really appreciate it. I'm going to turn off the stream. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you again tomorrow.